time will be at the very end of the service. So don't worry, kids. I haven't forgotten you. During my college years, I spent my summers working at Sky Ranch Lutheran Camp, which is located on the edge of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, outside Fort Collins. Has anybody been to Sky Ranch? Yeah, a couple people. I was a high wilderness guide there, which meant that I took high school groups on like 5-day backpacking trips and younger kids on day hikes. The mission of Sky Ranch is to facilitate an encounter with Christ on the mountaintops. Indeed, the camp itself, Sky Ranch, is over 9,000 feet above sea level. So just going to camp, you can get altitude sickness, and kids did. And then we often hiked to higher elevations of over 10,000 feet above sea level. Camp Anywhere, Bible Camp Anywhere, is a metaphorical mountaintop experience where kids can get away from daily life and parents and siblings and hang out with kids their own age and be led by cool college counselors and be captivated by song and story. Going to camp in the mountains, I think, is extra special, but I may be biased. At the end of the week of camp, we would all gather, and I remember looking at this passage, this gospel reading for today from Luke 9. We would talk about how great it is to be on the mountain with Jesus and how great camp had been. And then we would talk to the campers about what it will be like to leave the mountain and to go back down to the valleys and plains where their regular lives were waiting for them. And some of them, more than a few, wanted to stay. Like Peter, they wanted to stay on the mountain with Jesus and not go back to normal life. Can't we just live here at camp forever? But on Friday, their parents would come and pick them up and drive them down the mountain, back to their regular lives, back to reality. But we hoped that they would go back changed somehow, ready to face whatever challenges lay before them. I served at Sky Ranch in the summers of 2000 and 2001. So if you can do the math and figure out how old I am. I was asked point blank by the second graders today, who then asked if I was alive when Jesus was alive. Thank you very much. So I was at Sky Ranch summers of 2000 and 2001. The Columbine shootings, if you'll remember back that far, happened in 1999. So really this was right after that. And that was, of course, that was I feel like the first of these kinds of mass shootings that have become quite common now. Columbine, for those of you who don't know, is in Colorado, and it was less than 2 hours from Sky Ranch Lutheran Camp. So the campers that came to us were campers who lived in the shadow of one of the first most public, at least in my memory, mass shootings. What a relief to spend the summer on the mountain, learning, hearing the word Columbine, having no relationship whatsoever to guns, but learning that Columbine is a beautiful purple and white flower that you find on the side of the mountain trails. Together in God's creation, the kids laughed and sang and learned and healed. Mountains have long been recognized as a place where people feel closer to God. Anybody here have an experience of feeling closer to God on a mountain? Yeah, quite a few. In our first reading for today, Moses climbs Mount Sinai in order to talk to God. His face gets all shiny from being exposed to God's light. When Elijah was in danger, he fled to the mountains, where God revealed God's self not as wind or earthquake or fire, but as a still, small voice. And in our gospel reading for today, Jesus goes to another mountain to get away from the crowds and pray. It is on this mountain, Mount Tabor, is what it's called today, that he meets the Jewish greats, Moses and Elijah. It is on this mountain that the disciples get surrounded and immersed in a cloud and overcome by holiness. Holy stuff just seems to happen more often on the mountains. Or maybe it's just that we're more ready to see it when we are on the mountain. Mountains are what Celtics call a thin place, a place where the distance between humans and divine is less thick, less impenetrable. A thin place is a place where it is simply easier for us to connect with the divine. We need these thin places to reconnect, to recharge, to remember who and whose we are. We need these thin places to recover and to prepare. And I must add, thin places aren't restricted to mountains. You can find a ton of thin places on the plains of Minnesota. No one can permanently live on the mountaintop. For those of you who have done some hiking or backpacking, you'll know that when you get above tree line, you are vulnerable. You are exposed to the elements. You do not want to be above tree line in a lightning storm, where you're the tallest thing around. Mountain tops are sparse places, best for temporary stays. Moses and Elijah both had to descend from their mountaintop experiences. They had to go to do the work that they were called to do. Jesus and the disciples had to descend as well, to meet the gathering crowd, to heal the sick, to feed the hungry, to teach those who had ears to hear. You can get stuck in either place. You can get stuck on the mountain, living at Sky Ranch forever and ever, not wanting to leave the splendor, wanting to avoid pain and reality. You can also get stuck in the valley, forgetting to travel to those thin places where you can connect more easily with God. For Jesus and the disciples, the road to Jerusalem is about to begin. And for us, Lent is just around the corner. So as we prepare to embark on the season of Lent, I am wondering if you are being invited today to the mountain, to find the thin places in your life where you can reconnect with your Creator. Or perhaps today you are being invited into the valley, being invited to the ministry of healing and feeding and teaching for those who are hungry. Both places, both the mountaintop and the plains and the valleys, both are places to stand in awe of what God is doing. Thanks be to God. Amen.